Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
There is beauty in resilience, grace in determination, and above all, life that breathes into you with the sheer will to live. For Amber, beauty, grace, and life come together in a drive to survive on a May day when she was on a vacation in Arizona. The Red Rocks were unlike anything she had seen before, and she was excited to see the swooping canyons and glorious shades of red stretch out before her gaze. The elevation was difficult but enticing, and she welcomed the sun as it kissed her cheeks. She was happy, fully happy. And then her world turned to black. Or did it? Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. Hello, welcome back. I am your host, Kayla. First and foremost, I got a couple new Patreon members to thank, Colleen and Nancy. Thank you for joining us over there. And then I had a real big whoops last week, and I'm sure some of you heard in episode 105 an announcement that was supposed to be for subscribers only. There was just a slight mishap, and roughly 97 of you listened to the episode, which was supposed to be for subscribers. I know some of you got lucky before I noticed because I don't have 97 subscribers yet. And I corrected that episode as quickly as I noticed it. But in the event that you did not get lucky and listen to that episode before I grabbed it, I would like to take a moment to introduce to you Tragedy with a View's first and probably only Fat Bear Week, where we will be covering stories of bear attacks the same week that Katmai Conservancy, Katmai National Park, the National Park Service, and Explore.org are running their Fat Bear Week, where you are able to go and vote on which bear you think gained the most weight over the year as they prepare for hibernation. That being said, I have 3 other shows coming on as guests for this, with a couple of other things going on the month of October. And as an apology for letting last week's subscriber-only episode out into the wild, and as an apology for subscribers for last week's episode not being solely for you, I'm going to prepare a couple of mini-sodes for the month of November that you will get. Coming back to Fat Bear Week, this year's Fat Bear Week is September 23rd through the 30th. And because I've been planning for this to be the first week of October, I am going to release what I have ready the week of the 23rd. I don't think I'm going to have all 4 episodes ready. I think I can definitely have 2 ready, maybe 3. We'll see. But if they're not released the week of the 23rd, they will be released the week of the 30th. And so you're still going to get them. They just might be a week late. Now, coming to the topic of the episode, Amber Kohnhorst is a beauty. With her classic blonde hair, blue eyes, and friendly smile, it is hard to imagine that at 25 years old, she would have a reason to question if she would live. Though, as a nurse, she recognizes the moment her life is in danger. Growing up in Rochester, Minnesota, Amber works at the Mayo Clinic, where she is a nurse specializing in cardiovascular care. She was driven into nursing to help make a difference in people's lives as they sit quietly in a hospital room, recovering from a range of simple procedures to life-altering, life-saving medical attention. It all boils down to the fact that she cares. She is compassionate, not just for her patients, but also for animals. In her free time, she spends time with animal organizations like Rideability, which is an organization that offers therapeutic horseback riding for people with special needs, and Can Do Canines, who train dogs to help detect medical conditions such as seizures that are coming on and other various challenges. Not only this, but the time she wasn't spending with animals or at work, she was outside. Amber was kind and caring and determined, and this shined through all she did, even when she traveled, which is exactly how she ended up in Cane Beds, Arizona, near the Utah border. She was on her way to volunteer at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary while she was on vacation, and in her spare time, she was planning on hiking and exploring the terrain that was so vastly different from her home in the Midwest. She was staying at a bed and breakfast in Cane Beds, and that evening, after checking in, she decided why sit around in her room when she could go out and explore. She had been in her room for less than an hour before she sought out suggestions for hiking in the area. Her mother's voice rang through her mind, never hike alone. But Amber set off anyways, insisting that she would be safe. She wasn't going to put herself in any sort of danger. She decided to go to the Rose Cliffs National Conservation Area, which is a beautiful labyrinth of cliffs and slot canyons that are known for their beauty and their danger. The region is dramatic in its landscape. The skies are wide open, the ledges are steep, and the canyons are isolated and remote. It gives you the sense that even with others, you are utterly alone. At about 4 p.m. on May 20th, 2016, Amber arrived and started her hike. She had only packed a few supplies because she planned on following the trail for about an hour before turning around and heading back to her B&B. In her bag, she had some trail mix, a whistle, carabiners, a paracord survival bracelet, along with a few wipes. As she hiked, she noticed some interesting monoliths and started her way towards them as her mind was captivated by curiosity. She could see that one had stair-step-like structures that she decided would be safe enough for her to climb up. Using her momentum on the big sections, once she was at the top, she had a panoramic view of the stunning beauty. The red rock stretched out below her like a carved maze of deep and winding paths. She could see Zion National Park in the distance, but then she realized that she was also no longer on the trail, as the sun was beginning to dip behind the rugged terrain. It was 8 p.m. Darkness was approaching, and she knew she had a limited amount of time left to find her way back to her car. She wasn't on the trail, and she had no water. She had climbed her way up one of these monoliths and didn't realize in her haste much of the way up she was using momentum to scale the sections that didn't have the natural stair-step terrain, which also meant that as she began to descend, she found herself facing sheer rock faces with no clear way down. Again and again, she tried to find her way down, and she kept coming to drop-offs. She told herself not to panic, but she could still feel the worry creeping into her chest. She leapt between rocks and boulders, trying to find a path, only to come to a section each time that did not allow her to climb down. She took out her phone to dial 911 and found she had no service. And then she was surrounded by black.
Hello, I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
We're the husband and wife team behind the True Crime podcast, And Then They Were Gone.
We're a weekly show that covers unsolved missing persons cases. These are cases that you, the listener, can have an impact on.
Some of the people you may have heard of, like Kristen Smart or Braceless Pisa. But we also bring you missing people of color and other cases that haven't gotten the mainstream attention that they deserve. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or your favorite podcast app.
She blinked her eyes open, and she moaned with pain that seemed to be coming from her at every angle. Taking out her phone, she saw that it was 9 p.m. It had been nearly an hour since she last checked the time, and as she gazed up, she could see where she fell from, nearly 100 feet or 30 meters above her. She still doesn't know how she fell. The brain does some crazy things to protect ourselves from trauma, and this was definitely one of those situations. When she came to, she found herself inside of a narrow slot canyon. The remaining sunlight did not reach her here, And as the fog cleared from her mind, she found herself in an immense amount of pain. As a nurse does, she began to take stock of where she was in pain, feeling and checking herself carefully, and she suspected or confirmed that she had a torn ear, possible concussion, broken nose, fractured back, and fractured pelvis. Blood pooled around her head, and it was throbbing in pain, and as she gazed up, the walls surrounding her were mostly smooth. She had no idea what she was going to do, and so she laid there, confined to a 10 by 10 foot area that was encased in rock. She switched her phone to airplane mode. She didn't have any service anyways and wanted to conserve its battery, and then dug out the whistle from her bag and began to blow it all night long, desperately hoping that someone would hear her. The night was cold, and no matter how Amber tried to lay, pain pulsed through her body. The temperature dropped down to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or 10 degrees Celsius, meaning that even in the moments where the pain seemed to loosen its hold, shivers would rack through her body, sending stabs of pain through her again. During the night, though, she realized that the major injuries were all below where her pack had been on her back. She must have landed on her back, on her pack, which provided just enough cushion to save her life. But something else was happening in the night. Amber began to hallucinate. She kept seeing doorways open and someone was there to help her. Again and again, she would try to get up and crawl towards the door, only to have it disappear before she once again realized she was trapped. When the sun began to rise and light reached inside her little canyon she believed would become her tomb, she took out her phone for a very specific purpose. She took photos of herself and then began to write short notes to her loved ones to say goodbye. She said that she was sorry, that she fell, that she tried to blow her whistle, and that she loved them. With no water and no food, and with Arizona's heat during the day and cold temperatures at night, Amber knew that she would not last long. When she noticed a small slit in the wall of the ledge she was in, she decided to crawl through it to see if there was any way down through that direction. Instead, she found herself facing a 30-foot or 10-meter drop-off. But then, a drive unlike anything else came over her. She had realized no one was going to find her where she was, and in order for her to help her own chances at getting out, she would need to help herself. And so, she willed herself to climb. She screamed with nearly every movement, it being so painful that she couldn't hold the noise in. And when she took breaks, she would blow her whistle some more. She had made it 50 feet or 15 meters up when she realized that there was no way for her to go any farther in her current condition. She sat on a 2-foot wide ledge and pondered what to do now. She either needed to be rescued or she would die here. And then, through the silence, the red rock began to hum. As the noise became louder, she realized it wasn't a hum at all. It was a throbbing, a beating, a celebration that not all was lost, for there was a helicopter heading her way. When the owners, Don and Cindy of the bed and breakfast, noticed that Amber had not returned after she told them that she was going hiking, they got concerned. First, they and their neighbors searched the hiking trails, but after a few hours of finding nothing, they contacted the Mojave County Sheriff's Office, who first searched her room. They figured that she had intended to take a short hike since all of her belongings were still in the room. They heard that she was intending to climb Rose Cliff Trail, and so that's where they decided to start. Amber wasn't able to look up to follow the helicopter as it flew over her, so she got onto her knees and began to blow her whistle as hard as she could, unsure if they would hear her or not, but she was desperate for help. It was just starting to get dark again, but those in the helicopter knew that she was there somewhere. Those searching on the ground could hear her whistles for help. They just needed to locate where she was. They flew over her again, and then a fourth time. And finally, as they swung wide past her, she could see one of the 6 men in the helicopter lock eyes with her, and he pointed. The terrain here was extremely difficult for the helicopter and rescue crews to navigate. For hours, they tried several different tactics, but they could not reach her. They also could not land the helicopter, but the rescue crews decided to try something a bit different and a bit drastic. Instead of landing, they would hover above an area just big enough for the men to jump out onto. Then one crew member rappelled down to Amber. He gave her some Gatorade and then helped her into a harness. It was at this point where they were talking to her and getting the details and finding out where she had started, where she landed, and where she climbed to, that she likely fell 50 feet in a free fall before tumbling and sliding the other half to the bottom of the canyon that she started in. Again, this terrain is extremely difficult. It is forced and carved by millions of years of water running through the canyon. And as they tried to pull her up, they found that Amber could simply not just be pulled up. With the help of 4 men above them, 1 man with her, and her own resilience, Amber half climbed, half was dragged to the top of the cliff. Once she made it, rescuers ducked under each of her arms to help her walk towards the awaiting helicopter. Here, it again hovered, not touching down at all, with the propellers going at full power. The pilot held the controls steady, not even turning his head so that he didn't accidentally move the helicopter. They helped her inside, closed the door, and then she was off to Dixie Regional Medical Center in Utah. The helicopter lifted into the air at 2 a.m. on May 22nd, 29 hours after her fall. Amber was finally getting the care she so desperately needed. 30 people had been involved in the search and rescue, from members of the community to the Colorado City Fire and Rescue Team, Mojave County Rescue, and Arizona Department of Public Safety. Once at the hospital, nurses and doctors did their part and discovered that she had 3 fractures in her spine, a crushed pelvis, a broken nose, a concussion, and a large ear laceration. The biggest pain in the butt, literally, that Amber was going to have to deal with was the sacral or tailbone fracture that was shaped like an H. She had emergency surgery to stabilize her broken tailbone, where 6 rods were placed, and then she was to wear a brace to help protect her spine. She would need to be on bed rest for 10 weeks, where she needed 24-hour care, and then slowly start to integrate in physical therapy, first from her bed, then in a wheelchair, then in a walker, finally walking sticks, before she would be able to walk independently again. She has ongoing complications due to nerve damage in her spine and hips, but insists that you only get one life. You have to make the most and the best of life you can get out of it. In December 2016, just over 6 months after her accident, Amber returned to work at the Mayo Clinic. She started out doing administrative tasks until her body was ready to get back into the more physical demands that nursing requires. But after her accident, she had a new empathy for her patients, one that was growing and blooming from her own experience. She was grateful for life and appreciated all that she was doing and all that she had accomplished. And despite this, she refused to allow fear to alter her path. Amber has begun to take on public speaking, where she has told her story and all that she has learned to students, volunteers, and other healthcare professionals. And a year later, in August of 2017, Amber returned to the place she fell. Fears can be overcome with microdoses of exposure, and this step was a big one in overcoming all that she had experienced and giving her a sense of closure in her healing process. She talked to those who rescued her to thank them for what they did and the risk that they took to help her. And while Amber's experience highlights the unpredictable dangers when you are out in the wilderness, the importance of preparedness and the remarkable capacity of the human spirit can, in fact, prevail, even when hope seems all but lost. Amber never let her accident and her brush with death pull her from the compassionate ledge she lives on. She smiles freely and put energy in giving back to her patients, to animals, to the environment, and those who need it most. Thank you for listening. We'll talk next week. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.